Mm.
Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Mm.
So I'd seen that movie a few times, and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it in the way that I'm thinking about it now. So Samuel L. Jackson is the cold, hard killer through the whole movie, right? And because how Tarantino divides the movie and the scene, you go back and forth in a timeline, so you don't really see the progression of the characters like you normally would, right? And so Samuel at the end has essentially the guy comes out of the closet or the bathroom and shoots like a whole clip and hits nothing but air. I don't know if you remember that part in the movie, right? And then they're like, he's like, dude, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. I want you to acknowledge that. And I was just in like a weird space. And I'm like, in that movie is laying out the message that a miracle from the divine or a strike of inspiration from source, God, quote, whatever name you use to describe energy, they're the inevitable, right? Can change the most evil person into being a believer in a moment, in a moment of miracle.
Right.
So that idea is crazy. It's crazy, like, because everyone wants to change, right? Everyone wants to get better, or a lot of people like I feel unhealthy, or why do I feel depressed or anxious, or why do I feel like I'm spinning my tires, or this type of thing. And a moment of that, a brush in with a miracle, a moment of awe, a moment of inspiration of divine, has the ability to shift completely the trajectory of the perception. And I just thought it was amazing in the movie Pulp Fiction. He lays that out, and that's essentially the message, or one of the messages in the movie, is even the person with the darkest soul, if brushed by a miracle that's undeniable to them, has the ability to change trajectory and become the righteous man instead of the weak, or instead of the tyranny of evil men. So that was just like, I saw it on the weekend. I was just like, damn,
powerful.
Like, that's
powerful. Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino, like, hats off, man.
Which is crazy because Quentin Tarantino is a pretty dark dude.
Exactly, 100%, right? And in that whole movie, it's what's your thoughts on that? I guess like
these things sometimes flabbergast me, because you'll see Hollywood producers in the heart of darkness, surrounded in this what seems pretty objectively to be a very evil industry, where it's not just movie making, it's the programming of society, the deprogramming of often morals through acts of violence, senseless killing, etc., which Tarantino is the king of, right? If we're talking about the holy divine spirit and like the divinity of, inside of man and all this stuff, Tarantino rips that apart and takes a shit on it in almost every movie, right? So to juxtapose that with, I don't know, the profound verse, but also the message in the art, I don't know, man, it's a bit of a head scratcher. I'd want to go in deeper, because I think at first with my baggage, Tarantino, ooh, bad guy. I've seen some bad guy shit from him. I see the programming that he's kind of putting out there. I see what his movies are doing. But then I also know at the same time, to kind of touch on this, that inside of every single person is kind of like a divine being encapsulated by the traumatized egos and beings we are down here on earth. But inside of everybody is like this holy thing, this magical thing. And to deny that in another is to deny it in yourself. And so I don't know, man, it's a bit of a conundrum for me.
So let's take it apart, because it's funny. He essentially, it's not an actual Bible verse. Like, he reworded a specific Bible verse in it, right? So he has an intention with what he's trying to say, but there's three characters in that. there's, like I said, the righteous man. So the golden path, let's call it, or the path of optimal living, a path of, walking in
Selflessness.
grace, selflessness, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. Like you are completely a channel for whatever is higher, and you're just living out your way because you have a direct connection with that, right? That would be the extreme, the complete righteous man. You're living in you're walking the steps of God, essentially. And then the weak being, the people that need to be ushered through the valley of darkness, I think they say, shepherd through the weak through the valley of darkness. So confusion, chaos, we've all been in those spaces. We all need that helping hand to kind of get through that, right? But on a macro level, the righteous man is that guiding light through the darkness, right?
Right.
But then there's always the resistance, the tyranny of evil men, right? There's always that resistance to propel the need for the righteous man, right? So he essentially wrote that out and like pieced apart a Bible verse, which again, Quentin Tarantino, you're like, that dude he seems to be crazy, and like Saw and like these other movies, right? You know what I mean? It's like, how do you think of that?
Yeah.
And that's how I thought of him too. And then I watched this movie again with a different perspective and just kind of more in that frame of mind. And I was like, damn, like that was a whole, like his Pulp Fiction is famous. Like it's a cult classic, right? And the message behind that being the path of the righteous man is always available.
Right.
And like, I know we always talk about that, right? Like, it's like, okay, so how do you actually walk the path of the righteous man? Like, if that's a real thing and we accept it as a real thing.
Right. Yeah, it's you're touching on the part that the darkness needs to be there for the righteous path to exist. That's also a head scratcher, because I'm like, well, what if the righteous man is so successful in being righteous that, it converts and dispels the evil, transforms the evil into light? At one point, is that impossible to go any further because the darkness has to be there to define it as well? Right? Like, does the darkness all just disappear away into nothingness and it's just light? Like, how does that actually work? That process that we're kind of walking towards. But yeah, man, I mean, I know in my own life that ever since a very young age, I've been compelled to at least attempt to move towards that righteous path. And I wonder what the difference is compared to somebody who's just slightly leaning towards the dark path, who's just tempted towards that dark path, and what that little nudge takes. And in my work, in my coaching and stuff, I've seen people change, but it's never been anything that I've been able to show them. It's always been a realization that they've had about the divine. It's that idea of seeing a miracle and transforming, right? You kind of have to see the miracle, because what is the dark path? What is the evil path? It's the path of non-believing, right? It's the path of not believing that there is, divinity to it, magic to it. It's the path of nothingness. It's the path of believing, that it's all meaningless. And so I think it takes a miracle to convert from dark to light, but then to stay on that righteous path, to answer your question, if you can engineer these minor miracles in your life by giving them a bit more of a chance, by giving them an opening, by showing up and being present, sometimes with psychedelic experiences, sometimes just with sober presence. But if you can create that space, those little miracles will remind you constantly, which is just kind of like that heat-seeking missile, and it just keeps you kind of on course to be like, oh yeah, like I can't falter. The stakes are high. There is this spiritual battle going on. There is this process towards enlightenment going on. And that little miracle just proved to me that this isn't just nuts and bolts. And that's the same reason I now believe that when I die, it won't be just darkness forever, because I just witnessed something outside of that realm. So for me, the psychedelic experience and kind of going back into those miracles, like we've experienced a couple of those miracles, right? Where just by seeing them, you're just like, oh yeah. And it just like polishes you up to be a little straighter on that path.
Right. And this is a perfect segue, because I agree with you 100%. And there's different almost if the divine is like, again, if the divine is real, which I believe it is, and I know you believe it is, so we're having this conversation. But if you were a skeptic, right? The divine would be all encompassing. It would be everything. It would be here at the very moment. It would be, there where you were born, after you die. There's no leaving it. So just to start, you're never disconnected from it in general. It's more of an awareness of it that allows you to have a perception of it, right? So everyone's connected. It's not like this impossible task. You're already plugged in. So
it's nowhere you need to go,
right? There's nowhere you need to go. There's actually nothing you need to do. It'd be quite the opposite, but that so start with that. And then it's like, but we are living these lives. So for me, and this is kind of where I'm trying to, when I'm, going through this process with people and explaining, okay, so there's some methods that tap you into the present moment, and some are quick and easy, and they require less mental energy, less physical energy, and it's a daily thing or a weekly thing or maybe a monthly thing. And then some they just require a little bit more planning. They require a little bit more intention, more of a setup space, more of a curated experience, because you're bringing all the methods and you're kind of stacking them on top of another, right? So I'll give you the breath work or breathing being a great one, movement, moving the body, music, obviously, like music connects us all. Substances, take your pick. Normally the psychedelic kind of bend of stuff, but there's always stories of other things. And what was the fifth one? Sexuality. So those 5 methods or forces kind of hack the biology and will get you in the present moment, because that's what they're kind of meant to do.
Right.
And so on a daily basis, like, you might not be able to stack all those together, right? So it's like, okay, well, what's one of the easiest ones? Breathing. Okay, so if I have a little space every day where I just focus on one of the 5, breathing, let's breathe for 10 minutes. I think people get weirded out even with meditation now. It's like it has this whole idea behind it. And it's like, okay, we'll just start with breathing. Bring all your focus onto the breath. And this is nothing new, right? But we're just kind of explaining it in a different way. And take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes, and then but commit to it as a daily practice. And I know that this is, it's like beating a dead horse with that. But the smallest thing you can do is do that. And what makes it interesting, or what I found made it interesting, is normally they'd say, hey, we'll do that. Yeah, do it indefinitely for the rest of your life. Like, yeah, just keep doing the 5 minutes a day and you'll tap in. And it's like, well, the human mind needs a little bit more oomph sometimes to really motivate us to do things, right? So it's like, okay, so let's start with the daily practice of 5 minutes. But once a week, let's try to put 2 or 3 of those things together.
Right.
Let's, take an afternoon on a Saturday or a morning on a Sunday, and let's get some movement, some breathing, and maybe some music, right? Take that afternoon for yourself, right? And go for an hour walk, a 2-hour walk, and just think about the same thing, that present moment, that breath, come back to that breath, come back to that breath. And so you start doing that. Okay. And then, maybe on a monthly, you start adding a couple more. Maybe you add, making love with your girlfriend or your wife, or, and breathing and movement and music, right? And then maybe on the quarter, and I think this is kind of what me and you are planning to do, or at least try to direct our efforts this way, on the solstices, on the equinoxes, kind of on special dates, line up all of them.
Right.
And make it a weekend, make it a 2-night thing, a 1-night thing, and stack the substances with the music, with the movement, with the breathing, depending on if you're with your girl or your boys, the 5th one may or may not be there, but stack those together. And those are the moments that are going to give you that aha, that obvious, oh, there's divinity in the world.
Right.
But they're hard to do on a daily basis. So you have to progress up, right?
Yeah, and ideally you're seeing some benefit as you're doing it. That's not just, this benefit when you combine them all. And I mean, in every one of these tasks, You can either be present or you can be out of your mind, right? You can be mindless, you can be elsewhere in your mind. And so, like, I'm sure all of us have had sex when our mind is on something else. It's very disconnected. All of us have listened to a song when we're focused on something else, and it's just background music, right? It doesn't really matter. It's certainly not going to bring you to tears, right? Same thing with activity, same thing with breath, same thing with all these things. And I think you want to give yourself the best fighting chance for the peak moments. And so, I mean, one undertone I like to connect with all of these, with the sex part, it's a little bit harder, but with all of these is to be in Mother Nature, to be in the masterpiece from the divine that's been provided for us as a gift to us, that's all around us for us to soak up and drink up. And just by observing it, we are tuning our state up because it is engineered for that. It is engineered to balance our vibrations if they're out of whack. And it's engineered to bring us into presence. If you don't have your phone with you and you're in your house, because of your frames of reference, it's a lot harder to get present than it is if you're sitting at the beach, right? If you're sitting at the beach, well, there's a masterpiece in front of you, right? So if you can put your phone down, all of a sudden it's just like it tunes up, 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 up. And then if you can bejewel that moment with some 5-star perfect track that you've curated from some genius musician, you're going to get the backdrop, the visual with the music, and then the breathing. If you can be having sex and on psychedelics at the same time, peak life experience, right? But again, all of these things done in your home. There's so many reference points that bring you back to anywhere but the present moment. A picture on a counter, a post-it on your desk, a glance at the fridge and thinking, oh, I need to go get eggs, right? Like it could be anything. It's everything in your house. It's I need to pay rent to be here. It's all of those things. Whereas in nature, it's that perfect baseline.
And I agree 100%. So if you can build the foundation being in nature, it's optimal, always optimal. And, a lot of people, I think you go for walks quite often, but it just, some people just can't do it, right? And this is where I think creating a sacred space, right? Having a place, if you can't get into nature on a daily basis, have a little table with a candle, simple, and just have it clean. But if you need a space, it needs to be visually appealing and you need to want to be there on a daily basis, essentially.
Right.
So yeah, if you can't make it into nature, definitely that is optimal always. And if you can't, because you're just, stuck at home or working, have a room. I think Jordan Peterson said this have a beautiful room. Create a space that you enjoy to be in. That's clean, tidy, it's organized. You have some intention put behind it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's this idea of if you want to worship, where do you go, right? You go to a temple sort of thing. And metaphorically, you don't have to go to a temple, of course, but it's like the idea that the body is a temple. And if you take care of it, it's easier to access these higher states, access communication with higher realms. You can create a temple in your space. Like you said, light a few candles, have a bit of incense, play some soothing music that's, binaural beats or some sitar music or whatever, and just like get present, gently do some yoga. But this idea of the temple is instead of 4 walls, you're treating it as sacred, right? Like that's the difference. Your body, instead of it being an organic being, it's sacred. And so once you change that terminology and it's the temple, there's just a bit more reverence. And I think that's a really good baseline for getting into these higher states. You want to keep a temple clean, right?
Right.
You want to sweep the floors.
And this is the funny thing, because it's almost like the chicken before the egg. You need to recognize that it is a temple in order for you to want to take care of it as a temple, but you need to have that experience of a temple in order to have that experience. It's just like, you know what I mean? So that's where the awe and the, people that can curate those spaces or curate those experiences are beneficial, because then you have the reference point of sacred, of divinity, of divine, whatever you want to call it. And you can remember that moment in the little pockets of your daily breath work, in the weekly walks, in the monthly, whatever it is that you decide to program or that schedule into your, it's funny. It's almost like a date with, like Tony Robbins has Date with Destiny, right? He has his thing, but it's like, I really look at it, it's like you have to make a date with the divine for yourself. And it's like, you really have to choose, like, okay, I'm going to do this. And this is a classic meditation practice, right? Like just meditate 20 minutes a day, but it's just that there's not enough explanation behind that. I think for people that aren't looking for it, it's just like, oh, well, that doesn't seem like it would work. And I've heard it before. And I like money and my car and, watching hockey on television or whatever, depends on what you focus on. So.
Yeah, man. And it's like that you were saying, the chicken and the egg thing. It's tough because in order for people to do these things with the right mindset, you need to do it knowing that there is something greater always wanting to make contact with you in some way, through a thought, through a feeling, through emotion. Like contact is wanting to be made at all times. It's us that is distancing ourselves from that, forgetting that that's real, all these different things, disbelief, fear, etc. And so you almost need to have that broken by a minor miracle, right? And that's where the shamanistic experience comes in. That's where a good coach can come in. That's what we want to do, is to take people through these little miracle moments where it's like, okay, now you've seen it. Now you know that it's real. You're going to forget unless you come back again and again in all these different ways. Here are the rituals you can do. You need to actually do them, or you will forget. And I have noticed again and again and again, having taken many people through psychedelic experiences where literal miracles have happened, and people can gently go back to sleep when they go home and they say, maybe it was just the drugs. Maybe it was just in my head. Yeah, it's all in your head. These drugs are keys to enter different spaces, but do you trust yourself? Are you searching for the divine, or have you made up your mind that it's not meant for you or it's not real? Because your belief or your lack of is the window or the barrier between you and it. And so that barrier needs to be dismantled. The window needs to be opened. But once the shaman or the coach steps back and you're on your own, are you going to sit there and are you going to meditate knowing that the divine is there waiting to make contact with you? And if you don't hear anything or feel anything, it's not because it doesn't exist. It's because you're not present enough. And it is waiting for you always. And if you go in with that certainty, meditation's a whole different thing. You'll get to states where you'll start channeling flow state, genius idea after genius idea, because you've opened the valves. And it might not sound like an old man in the sky. It might just sound like you. But it might be the best you. Oh, I've got a great idea. Oh, I've caught onto something like a needle on a record. Oh, I want to write. That problem is just solved. I want to just, you're connecting with the divine. We need to change our framework of, what this meeting with God is, this date with destiny is. And oftentimes it's just you, it's your intuition, but people don't know what they're looking for. And then when people don't find it, they say, I don't know if that's real. I don't know if that's real. And you're just building this wall between you and the truth. And some people go to their dying days with walls all around them, only to have them smashed down upon their death. Launched into the most people.
Most. And that's the crazy part is death like waits for no one, right? These classic things. And so to push the thought of that down the road to the point that you don't address it seems foolish and just kind of misaligned. Or I was always shocked in our culture, right? We have such a weird idea of death. We don't really have a religious structure anymore. There's no guidance, right? It's like we were talking about the righteous man. You will be your best guide star, but you need to clear the intuition. And exactly what you're saying is get present enough so you know indefinitely what you need to do. And this is where distractions are just the worst. This is where your phone taking the nature is always going to be whispering. Well, just, pick it up, right? Or this is, so when you talk about sitting there and tapping in completely to the flow of genius, let's say, or the muse or the divine, right? Like I think it was the Greeks called it the muse, like, and maybe there's different energies, like, maybe in a creative space, it's, you know, something else. I
Right.
think it's one thing, right? Like they had different names. There's a whole
Different channels,
pantheon of
maybe.
gods, right?
Right.
Different channels, different things, but just for, you know, our sanity's sake, it's you're tapping into the one thing, divinity.
Right.
All these people that have speckled history, right? They've done the impossible. And, you know, going back to the old philosophers, to the mathematicians, to, you know, people like Leonardo da Vinci, who clearly were in the know with certain things. Like the output that you're putting out with that creative talent is just insane. So I do believe, and I don't know whether it was like they knew about it first and that got them into the knowledge, or the knowledge got them into the divinity, right? It's like, were they adepts? And I, you know, I think if you don't think anything is, or everything happens for a reason, they were born adepts. But
Right.
say they were learning in life and they're going through the process, kind of like most people, trying to discover who they can be, right? Did they have an experience that was a miracle, and then they started begin to channel all the stuff? Or did the knowledge and stuff start whispering to them through the veil of reality, through mathematics and geometry, and just kind of them learning about their environment, and that pulled them into it?
Hmm.
So it's like, I think it was Descartes who essentially, I forget what I'm actually going to Google this quickly, but
Yeah.
he had Rene Descartes was a philosopher, right? And so I think, therefore I am. That was his like best known saying, right? And he kind of came from, like, he was a soldier in the military, and an angel came to him in his bed one time and said, "The world will be conquered by number and measure." This, like a variation of that, I might be butchering it, but that he got a divine message saying, look at the world rationally and you will essentially see the fingerprint of the divine in it. Because when you
Right.
get down to the micro, that's where everyone gets stumped. It's like, it's an
Golden
intelligent
ratio.
design.
Right.
Yeah, all these things, right? It is an
Yeah.
intelligent design. So I'm just always fascinated because it's like the awe experience seems more readily available than laboriously learning these things, right? But that you both have to do them at the same time. And that, I think, is what turns off seekers or anyone that's kind of like dipping their toe in a little bit, is like, it actually is work, you know,
Yeah.
clearing your lenses, doing these things to come back to the table, come back to your date, come back to presence. It's work, right? And so it actually takes effort. And with our diets and with working at jobs that most of us don't, you know, aspire to be spending long extended hours at, because we love it so much,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of just come in depleted already.
Right.
And it's like, like, maybe it's real, and I think it's real, and I even hope it's real.
Yeah.
But man, I'm running on red to yellow battery
Right.
daily. Like, I don't even have the juice to even think about that. And this, I think, is a huge barrier. Is cognition takes energy. Like, it really actually takes energy to think about these things. And we don't really think about that. We're like, oh yeah, thinking doesn't tire you out. But you could wake up, sit there all day, and you would get tired again, even if you didn't move or do anything. Your body burns energy, just your systems. So this is where the fitness angle comes in. And I don't think the camps are separate, because in order to even start getting to a point where you have enough energy to pursue a righteous path, or pursue you know, dance with the divine, you gotta, and Aubrey Marcus has the quote, like, you gotta be fit for service. And I do think that is accurate and true. It's like, your ship has to be tuned up, get the oil changed, get the tire, like, you know, whatever you need to do, get your body in tip-top shape so you have expendable energy to put into a creative passion project, to put into even a daily meditation, right? To put into the extra walk once a week. And that is a huge barrier for people. We just don't, as a society, have the energy to pull these things off, even though we're already connected. But it's like, it's that laziness of falling into the chaotic kind of scrum that you were talking about. You can be having sex with someone, but thinking about work. you can be listening to music, but thinking about your anxious thing that you have to do when you get home. And
Right.
we almost pull away from it because it's easier to be distracted than it is to be focused. Yet,
Because we feel like we're falling behind if we're present.
exactly. Well, we feel like the world's leaving without us, but
Right.
it's the opposite, right? It's like, no, come back to the center and the world will move in perfect timing with you because you are the only thing in existence in your sphere, right? And that's getting to like another level is when you can center your anchor, right, deep enough that when you come around on a full cycle again, you know where you're kind of frayed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm feeling a little thin. I need to, get back to a center point, get back to the anchor, which all those things that we listed before can help with that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a music song, a favorite tune, quick breathing, or my favorite, floating, because it kind of almost like puts you in an environment that forces you to encounter that space, right? It's like
Very forced. Yeah.
yeah, very forced. It is literally eliminating any other input, just your mind, just your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, everybody keeps talking about how they feel like time is speeding up. Time is speeding up. And time is speeding up when you are living out of the present in loops of programs or imaginings or thinking of what it could be or what it will be, all these chaos thoughts in the head. And time is speeding up for those people, for all of us, because there's more stuff than ever. There's more programs than ever. There's never been a time in history where there's been more marketing money put behind trying to fill your brain up with stuff. There's never been more catchy tunes. I mean, think about it. Every year that goes by, every human on earth hears how many more catchy tunes that have been programmed just to hypnotize us, sing along in the back of my head. I'm chanting Lady Gaga songs in the shower, not knowing where the fuck these things are coming from. And it's like these things build up and they steal your time because they take your presence. And I was just on a camping trip for 2 nights by myself. And I'll tell you what, if you want time to slow down, get present. And when you get present, time creeps along. Man, the days were juicy. That sun was setting forever.
No,
And
I bet.
it was amazing. I was sitting there watching it thinking, oh my God, I get this for hours and hours and hours. And the clock ticked by so slowly. And not one ping or pop or ding or anything calling me to my device. I was completely there. And I hacked time travel in that moment, man. I was like, oh yeah, like time has been feeling faster than ever, but out here it just came to a screeching halt. And you are at the speed of the waves. You are at the speed of the clouds and the wind and the trees swaying. And that is the natural rhythm of what the human being should be tuned to. That is the anti-anxiety rhythm, right? Watch the waves lapping across the shore and it will gently unwind you even if you do nothing else. That gentle metronome from the divine, just again and again and again and again. And it'll set your clock right. So, yeah, man, for a lot of people who feel like they don't have the time to do the exercise, to get more energy, to go do the thing, to have the date with the divine, there's so many layers that can build up on top of you. The layers are in here. The moment you actually start to do these things, time actually slows down. It's like when you go for a workout. If you haven't worked out much, how long does your first 1 hour workout feel? It feels forever, right? Like it's forever, right? Those first 5 reps are just like forever. And so, I mean, this is partly why, and we all suffer from it. I suffer from it. But this is why I'm so passionate about the coaching space, is because if you can have somebody reminding you these little points to put a little more effort into, to go set yourself in this, if you can have somebody convince you to go do that float, convince you to climb up that mountain, convince you to camp overnight in this one spot, convince you to eat the mushroom, all these different things, you'll go do it. And then the barrier to entry will be less because you will just be so tuned up from the experience and so full of belief that you want more of it, more of it, more of it. I can't wait to go back camping, and I'm going to do it soon because I want to slow down time. I want this spring and summer to be juicy. And I don't want to be a anxiety ridden basket case and, singing Lady Gaga songs in the shower. I don't want that shit. I need to clear my head. But for the guys who can't just go out and do this, you either need a tribe of people who are inspiring you to do it, or you need to go get a coach who's going to help you with this path, or a men's group, or just some sort of accountability. Because otherwise, you'll sit on the couch for months and then years, and then you'll wake up realizing you haven't made time for it, and you'll be bitter you haven't made time for it. And another decade will go by of prostituting yourself out for your work you shouldn't be doing, but you haven't quieted your mind long enough to hear a message from the divine that you've always known, which is you need to jump and know that you will never be let down. Know that if you leave that job, it will only be more glory. It won't be more pain. But you can't get that message unless you actually make space for it.
Yeah, and that's the make space in your thoughts. What a idea, right? Because it doesn't even, when you hear that, again, like we have to make context for this for people, because this, I understand what you're saying and I'm with you 100%. But if someone's listening in, it's like, I don't even know what you mean making space. And
Right,
so
right.
the easiest thing, right, is like what you said. Okay, go to nature.
Right.
That is like baseline. Just go to nature. If you do that, and everyone knows, you go for a walk in nature, you go hiking, leave your phone in your car. That's even better.
Yeah,
Go to
no phone.
nature and leave your phone in your car, right? Like,
No audiobook, no phone, no distractions. I would even say no music until you've gotten present. Listen to the great music once you're present. And here's another thing. If you're not very good at being present in your life, you probably have shitty taste in music, because it's just background noise painting a picture of high amplitudes while you're doing your stuff, getting jobs done, getting tasks done. That fires me up. It revs me up. Get super present. And in that moment of super presence, when you're hanging on every beat, every lyric, your taste in music will refine and become better and better and better, because you'll be there to drink it up with all of your senses, instead of it just being some dopamine hit where that Lady Gaga song actually sounds good because it's been engineered by a team of specialists to get you singing the hook, right? But if you're present, it's not going to happen.
and this is everything though, right? Like, everyone is fighting for your presence. Everyone's fighting for your mental energy. And so you actually have to take control back and say that I'm going to manage this now, right? I'm now going to take control of where I put my focus. Where do I spend my minutes, my hours, my days? Is it on Netflix? And, we all love movies. We're not demonizing entertainment. It's just, when you look at a day, what are you focused on?
Right.
And if you don't have a list of things that are motivating you, inspiring you, helping you get more present, helping your body or your mind clean up itself, you're going in the other way. You're going the opposite direction. You're depreciating. You're a depreciating asset, right? Like, it's like you're breaking down. Time is breaking you down versus you're compounding on the skills that you're looking to have in the future. I want to be this person. I was looking at this thing. We can't change our habits. It's in James Clear, Atomic Habit, the book, but we try to change our habits at the level of the habit. And that's the least effective way. But if you change your identity to someone that would believe there is divinity or grace or, source in the world, and that you can be a participant, a very primary participant, the main actor for you, right, in that story, all of a sudden it just becomes way more, you want to be focused. Like, it's like there's work to do, right? And because you're getting those breadcrumbs, it's like, okay, here you go. Okay, you're listening. Here you go. But this is where vices come. And right, as we start the path of righteous, trying to walk the golden path, trying to, align ourselves, we'll come up to resistance in lots of things, from relationships to communication things with family, to pretty much everything, to substances, alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, everything, right? Like, vices pull you away from presence. That's what they're meant to do. That's the hit. And so as we, and there's, again, yes, and for all these things, like, cannabis is amazing to help put you in the present moment. Right. So, but it's one of those things that vices, if you're using it, and it's all about the intention of how you're using it, if it's a distraction, it's pulling you away from what you're looking to have. And these are like things that we all have to deal with, right? We all have communication issues with someone in our life that we could clear up normally, or that we could, be more on point with. Someone that is in a close circle, right? We try to, as we walk this path, get things clear. Tell the truth. As hard as that is in every situation, tell the truth. And we're born to censor ourselves in a lot of way and not explain what's on our mind, just kind of face value. So we are almost directed to not tell the truth all the time, or to not try to keep it straight and square. And, I'm sure you've had someone that seems like they're telling the truth or comes at you straight and square, and it's like, it creates conflict. So then people don't want to do it because it creates this weird thing. But if both those individuals are ready and willing to work through that, it's a greener grass on the other side. But and that's the resistance, another place of resistance where, lean into the fear, lean into the resistance, because through that is the growth of what you're looking for anyway. And that's where, fail often and fail fast. These are like positive psychology quotes and things like this to tie it back into grounded psychology, right? Because if you haven't had an awe-inspiring moment, well, here's a method on how to access that. We laid out a good roadmap, but this is also, it all connects, right? Like the body is not separate from the mind, not separate from the soul. So you can kind of start working at a different angle depending on what you believe to be more tangible. Let's just say, like, okay, well, I know I have a body. Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Okay, well, at least I know I have a mind. And these are good access points that if you do start to kind of dissect them, they ricochet off each other, right? Having more energy physically gives you more energy mentally to even contemplate a higher plane. If you're physically drained, it's hard to stack those levels. It's really hard to jump, unless I don't even know. You almost need to build up from the ground, else the temple falls.
Yeah. And sometimes one can start before the other. Nutrition and physical exercise can be kind of interchangeable. Some people don't need to do a lot of physical exercise, a few walks. But if you're doing that, then you better be eating really clean, right? Really high vibe stuff. Whereas if you're working out, you can get away with eating stuff that isn't quite as good. If you're doing both, it's obviously more of a tune-up. But even if you don't work out much and your diet's not too great, if you're engineering a 5-star psychedelic experience while listening to, Beethoven, and you're very present for it, it might be just enough of an inspiration, of a portal, to make you realize that there is divinity in this world. And then when you go to look at the chocolate bar, there's that added filter of, oh yeah, like there is magic. Like, what does this mean? I know it's bad, and knowing it's bad and still doing it, isn't that worse? Because of your awareness, right? And so I think as long as you're becoming more aware, all of these things will naturally wind up. But it's that process of, like we were talking about before, it's like, are you moving towards awareness or away from awareness? And ignorance is bliss, it's bliss until it's hell, right? And you don't know how you got there. But yeah, to not think about these things is at face value easier. The chocolate bar, the sitting on your ass, the staying in the job you hate for year after year, the relationship you hate, the mindset you hate, sitting in fear year after year and knowing that you shouldn't be so afraid. Well, if you don't do anything about it, you're going to start to hate yourself. And all of that is just a quick path to leaning away from awareness, unless you choose to face it, which is more painful, like that telling of the truth, like having that confrontation. But if you have an experience with the divine, and excuse my language, if if you go around before telling your next lie or your next truth thinking God is watching, right? The divine is with me right now. I am with me, my higher self, my awareness, whatever you want to call it, right? Try not to get confused with the words. But if you realize there is magic to this world and you are about to tell that lie, you will be aware acutely of how that feels when you say it. And if you can be there for that moment, even that lie can be an educational experience where you say, that didn't feel good. I've lied for years and it hasn't really mattered. I haven't really thought of it, but that didn't feel good. And you'll think about it for a while. The other person won't know that you lied, but you'll leave days later, weeks later, sometimes years later and say, I remember that lie and I lied and I know that and I carry that with me and I'm aware of that. Who did I lie to? I lied to myself. And that awareness is like a starting point. But in the process of awakening, man, is it ever painful coming to these realizations, facing the person that you've constructed and having to deconstruct this shit that's not authentic you. Oh my God, it's wildly painful, right? Dark night of the soul shit. And so that can also be very intimidating for people.
You're essentially having to, the metaphor of the caterpillar to the butterfly, you actually have to leave your old self in order to have the new self. Like there's no room in the new frequency for that energy. And that's where, like, that's the natural buffer. That's why, like, there is no, you can't fake the funk with that. It's like, it's a frequency thing, right? And we've talked about that and we've had those experiences where, and again, we're always aiming to get back to that completely synced up point, the rhythm of nature, the rhythm of creative potential. But we're stumbling and falling and, trying to stay on point, kind of like a drunk person having to walk the line, like we're learning, we're human, we're going to mess up. And it's in the process of going through that you tighten your bowling lane, that you start shooting the arrow a little bit, what in Buddhism, the straight and narrow way. It's like you have to zigzag to align. And that's the part I think that is important to acknowledge, because you're going to go too far left and you're going to go too far right. And then you're going to go, okay, that's too far right. I got to come back to the middle. And whatever that means for you, right? Maybe it's too much drinking, none at all. Right. And then, like, just kind of as you have these things, you're going to know what's best for you to align yourself. And over time, as the experiences get more and more potent, that will become more in line with the true rhythm of what would be your optimal self.
Right.
Because a lot of us at the time, if you're starting on this or you're just hearing this for the first time and you're going, that is not me. Like, I just don't even hear that. I'm not even sure what that even means. Of course not. Like, of course not. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. It's crazy talk. It's absolute crazy talk. And so knowing that the left, right, and that the coaching and the guidance can help shorten that zigzag to be tighter and be, maybe a year or two or a year versus 5-10 years, you know what I mean? Like, shorten the mistakes made. And we do this with everything else. When people are learning anything, we learn from people's mistake, right? We learn from the people that went ahead and they teach you how to do it better. And so that's kind of what we're doing here, or what we're attempting to do, is explain verbally something that is hard to describe, that sounds like it's impossible. Essentially, it's an impossibility, or that I've never even spent more than 5 seconds thinking about it, but grounding it in a process that you could get substantial evidence that it could be real for you.
Right.
And at that point, that's all we can do. Essentially, that's all. And in doing that, we will be best at it when we are doing it the best ourselves. Like, that's the funny thing, right? Like, we will be the optimal example of that when we have cleared up all that in our own lives. Like, and that's kind of how is our journey. And then that will be everyone else's individual journey. It's the same thing. So you hear from different people on the path, and you kind of even know, right? Like, you meet someone or whatever, and you have those conversations, and there's a presence, there's an awareness. They're actually maybe listening to you. They care to what you have to say, right? They're like, oh, this is versus the distraction. I'm somewhere else, but I'm here talking with you.
So I was going to say, if you have if you're fortunate enough to have a minor miracle moment where you have, and again, this is hard to understand if you have no reference for this stuff, but kind of the all is one moment, the oneness moment, then when you're listening to other people, you're not just listening to another person, you're listening to the divine, right? And then I go into this conversation listening to you to hear God through you. And I will be able to know whether you're distracted or you're tapped in based on how the channel is coming through, based on the words you're using. And if it's plucking at my being and I can feel it in my being, then these words aren't just, words from some random, they're words for me. And I feel like that's how in a conversation things can spin up between people, where you can start channeling deep wisdom for each other because you're listening into the divine. You are just conduits for it, playing it back and forth to itself. And again, wild fucking concept, but that's where a guided psychedelic experience to get you to that point of oneness, even if you can't hang on to what that really means, but you just get there, you will come out of it thinking, okay, I don't really know what just happened. I don't really know what that was, but I somehow know that everybody here is me, and we're experiencing this whole thing together as one. And again, I don't know what that means, but now when I'm listening to you, I'm really fucking listening, because you're not just a random dude. I'm listening to me.
100%.
Right.
And this is the difficulty, because to have that point of unicity, who you are can't exist. Full stop. And that is death.
Ego
that
death,
would be ego death, not physical death. That would be the death of your identity, of the construct that you've built in your brain that you perceive that you are. And when you're not that, you are the only other thing that exists, which is everything. And so that identity will hold on, and that's why there's almost, again, resistance to it, because it wants to exist. Right? Like that identity wants to almost be, that's the ego. It wants to be separate. That's its purpose. And so it's like this conundrum within you that, like, on one side, you're pulled to the world that's telling you to, come out and be plugged into your phone or the distraction or whatever's going on. And then on the other side, there's the deeper whisper that's like, but it's always back here. Sure, go out and play and, do your thing, but it will always be back. Everything you'll ever need will be back here. And once you can pick up on that chord, you really try to focus everything around keeping that presence in your life, because your life, hopefully, ideally, we're speaking.
Some people go back to sleep real easy, real quick.
That's where I think the program is necessary.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like for myself personally, it's like,
me too.
I need to schedule these things in, because I'm always going to get pulled in. The world is it's very amazing. Obviously, like the internet and your phone blows your mind. It's the world's information in the palm of your hand. You know what I mean? Like, we're not messing with something that's kind of like, man. So it's like, no. I know that this is the most important on, like, the deepest foundational level. And I also know that anything that seems to be amiss outside will sort itself once I come back to that middle point.
Right.
Often enough that it's a frequency I try to spend more time in, or at least a presence you try to spend more time in, right? But that's the infinite game. That is the back and forth, and whether it passes on, or you believe reincarnation, or however you think the body, whatever happens, like whatever your philosophy is or your religious belief on that seems to be the infinite game, is progressively scaling up your connection to the infinite until you become the infinite.
Yeah, and to the uninitiated, this sounds like batshit crazy, wild, just speculation. But
It is
If you've-
speculation. We're shooting
It
the
is,
shit.
of course, it's speculation. But if you've even had a taste of this, again, like that needle on the record, you can be like, oh, yeah, I'm listening to myself. That sounds like wisdom. It doesn't just sound like something that's up here, something that was captured online and regurgitated. It's wisdom. It's coming through these people. And yeah, that's when you get to this state enough times, I feel like, and you're doing the work, you start to transform and it starts to come easier. And you start to realize that if you don't say your truth that's coming to you, you're lying to yourself. And so you don't hold back from that thing you want to say. And I've started, I mean, in all this coaching stuff, I started making videos and content and all this stuff. And the message to me is always the same. It's like, this is a message for myself more than anybody. I'm reminding myself more than anybody. And I'm creating a video journal, an audio log, whatever it is, to try to capture this wisdom so that I can listen to it again, so that I can find my way home again. But it's also a message to my future self, right? I do believe in reincarnation, and I think that we have been coming back again and again and again in this process of purification, some sort of inner alchemy that's been happening. And this is the motion of the human experience moving forward. And we've been born into this contrast, this dark and light, to move, to be able to have a place to move to and to evolve. And so I make my messages to myself and my future self. And if I do a good job doing that and I'm in enough truth, tons of people will benefit just from listening, because it'll resonate with them as well, right? But it's always a message to self, because society constantly is trying to nourish our egos and starve our souls, right? It wants us to step away from our souls. It wants us to consume. It wants us to be addicted to all of these different things that are pulling at us. And so, yeah, the accountability group, tribe of people, some very good friends on this path with you, or if you don't have those things, coaches, people who are literally on this path themselves, who might just be a little bit deeper in it, who are so certain of the path that their certainty will not shake. They've embedded themselves in this truth, in this direction, in this alignment, so that when you have your doubts, they can dust those doubts off and remind you of your power, remind you of who you really are, so that you're not afraid to leave that job that you know you hate, so that you'll go to the gym that you know you need to go to. Well, they'll just be that extra little push. And people need that, man. Even the best athletes in the world have coaches, right?
And then I agree with you. But there's this. So I know people who have done this, right? They have a peak experience, and this is where I think there's a good idea or lesson in the progression of it, right? There's idea that you burn the ships, right? Burn the ships, and then you have to take the island. And it works. A lot of people, promote that idea. Like, burn the ship so you don't have an option. You will take the island, right? In my life, I've witnessed people that say encounter this golden path or the middle path or whatever you want to call it, even psychedelics at an earlier stage, peak experiences that don't have a structure to form it, right? And so what happens is you're essentially get dripped the most potent thing you could experience, and it's a peak experience, boom, and they are layered with an identity that then is no longer who they think they are. And I've witnessed it over and over. And what happens is, if that is not kind of like, okay, here's a structure here, and this is where when you talk about a coach or a guide comes in, let's take this apart delicately. This is your life, right? Maybe you do need to quit the job and go, overseas immediately and leave everything. Maybe that is, and really think about it if it is, but more than likely it's not. There's some sort of mix between the two. And I find if people ricochet hard, they have this moment, boom, everything's got to change. They ricochet into a space, and the reality of their resolve or the potency of the memory starts to dissipate very, very quickly. And what happens, or what seems to happen, is then they're drowning, and the ricochet back happens. And now they're back in the same circumstance, the same sort of environment, but with a memory of the attempt and the failure,
Right.
almost. And this is, I think, a hard point for people, because that happens all the time,
Mhm.
right? Like it almost adds another layer of resistance that you have to then build yourself up. Okay, this time I'll start making smaller steps. Maybe I don't need to, dump everything, but maybe the smaller practice, right? Maybe it's not the job, maybe it's my morning routine that I need to get in order,
Mhm.
or, little things. And it's a smoother transition. It might not provide as much oomph or as much like, let's send it, let's jump in the deep end and learn how to swim. Some people are built for it,
Yeah.
Other people are not.
Yeah.
And know yourself. And the slow, steady progression is amazing if you're doing it delicately like a surgeon. And little by little, you start peeling back the layers of the onion, right? And it becomes the journey. So necessary for some, dangerous for others, but always normally a learning lesson. Those type of peak experiences that aren't surrounded by support structure, essentially.
Right.
Because if you don't have that conversation with the person or whatever, and you feel like you're alone, you might not make great decisions, or
Yeah.
you might make rash decisions, right? And I'm sure people that have done this as well, that kind of like, and we're not here to judge anyone's life, like, we're not saying that, but it appears that someone wants to engage in an act, and the act is beneficial, but then the act itself becomes daunting. What keeps the motivation?
Hmm.
That's where that divine peak experience would come in. Keep aligning back to it, right?
Yeah. And again, if you don't have somebody who's on that path, if you're surrounded by naysayers, if you're surrounded by, again, don't get triggered by the words, but godless folk, who just don't believe in any of that stuff, you start doubting yourself, right? It happens with anything. If you stick some non-believers around a bunch of people who have had these peak experiences and they are absolutely convinced of the magic of this world, their confidence and their belief will transform you, right? Your environment does matter. It's hard to be a saint in a whorehouse, right? It's easy to be a saint in a church. So you got to surround yourself with the right tribe. I think that all of this progress is so hard with the distractions we already face that if you also don't have that support structure, it's damn near impossible. You would need to have an iron resolve and discipline of a wizard in order to have a peak experience, go back into an average life, not surrounded by a support structure, and to gently progress towards your personal enlightenment. Because of that one experience, it would be miraculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Harder said, almost impossible unless you have someone dropping a breadcrumb or a very strong intuition, which when you're young, you get taught that it's conscience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have this thing and like, maybe it's the same, maybe it's not. But when you're a kid, your conscience, right? You've heard this, like, oh, that thing that's trying to guide you in a good way. Do you think that is the same as what we're talking about, but just in a progressive way when you're younger? Because there is a guiding force that seems to be in children, right? Like
they're less programmed with bullshit, right? Less jaded, less fear. I mean, for your average child who hasn't been severely traumatized, they have substantially less fears, right? Think about all of the fears that adults have around finances. Kids don't have that, right? That's a major fear. Like almost everybody has, unless you're loaded, right? Or you've cracked the code. So to not be a slave to scarcity that way, I think your intuition can just speak to you more clearly. It's like the idea of, Leonardo DiCaprio or Leonardo da Vinci and all these guys having these genius track records of so much creation, so much output. Did they have one of these experiences? Maybe, Or it could have been just such a polished intuition because they weren't loaded with baggage. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have all this bullshit. They didn't have all this doubt. And they could actually have the space to let these great ideas that wanted to come forth from the other realms through these conduits. It chose a conduit, and there it was, right? It came through them. But I think children are just, they haven't been fucked up by society, by culture.
Right. And that's where when people say, try to stay young at heart for as long as possible, is that kind of classic lesson. It's like, try to remain a child with open eyes, because the hardest thing about accepting that this could even be real is you thinking for this long that it's not. Right. It's like, if you can keep open with the wonder of a child, it's not a hard step, because it's like, well, oh, that's just another thing that I wasn't paying attention to. But if you have 20, 30, 40, 50 years of not accepting that to be part of the reality, unless you can, if you grew up in a religious household, you might have different frameworks around it and whatnot. But that is the deprogramming. That is the importance of coming back to the present, is erasing that knowing that the ego knows these things, right? It's like, oh, well, I know this. I've got along this far. I know this.
School, man. School is the programming agent numero uno, right? When you're a child, you're sitting there looking at the planetary solar system hanging above you, and you're being told about the gas composition of the rings of Saturn. It's very hard to, out of that space, think about, the divine. And society, Western culture, less and less is even mentioning these things, lest it be in ridicule. And, it is as if all organized religions have been set up to fail so that people can look further away from the divine for answers and further into science. And, all these pedophilic priests and all these different things, I can't help but think it's all been positioned to further crush the idea of there being a divine, because the last thing a society wants is for its people to wake up and realize that it doesn't need rulers. You can be self-led because of your intuition. They don't want that, right? That's the opposite of control. That is freedom.
Right. So, but these religious institutions, this is where, I guess, if you doubt that the knowledge is around to explain these things, each religion has its hidden side. Right? The knowledge of the shadow side, which then seems to be evil or gets that kind of connotation, dark, which is more just veiled, all have secret mysteries, right? Like the religions of today stemmed from different rituals and ceremonies that came, back from ancient Greece. Even further, depending on what your belief in the timeline is of history, which now is, again, starting to be completely unearthed and unraveled, which provides that evidence, I think, that, okay, wait, there was maybe some lineage of this knowledge. There was things that knew about that man was divine, man was God. This isn't us just necessarily shooting the shit. And each religion has that hidden side. And so you can investigate these things with that lens that man, woman is divine, man, woman is God. And you see it in the symbols. You see the hidden kind of message in the symbols. And this is when people start learning about these things, it can actually kind of speak to you, right? Like when you look at the Christian cross, you see the cross, but you also see two intersecting lines of energy. Maybe you start seeing masculine, feminine. Maybe you start seeing, right? And you start seeing these different layers of what these religious symbols could mean. And it substantiates the felt experience, right? Because we're always like, well, that's just in the mind. And, or like, that can't be that real because that's just in the mind. Or, it was a curated adventure around a fireplace in the woods, but that's, that was just in your mind. But when you start to look, and like, there's been lots of people who have had this in their mind and have tried to and attempted and successfully decoded it in a lot of ways. And so it just is like, oh, this is not like it's a hidden, but it's a known path, right? And like, but it has to be walked by the individual. It's nothing that you could copy. That's what makes it such an adventure, because it is the unique journey that you're meant to go on if you believe in destiny or, you know, fate or anything like that. So that's what I think that helped me a lot, is seeing these things in other places. And it's like, it substantiates the feeling of divinity when you come back and it starts to fade and you're not practicing all the things to keep you tuned up. And then you start reading something, or you see in a movie, you know, Pulp Fiction, a quote, boom, you know, the quote I read at the beginning, the path. And it's just like, it's like your higher self or the divinity or something just dropping that breadcrumb.
Right.
And it kind of like forms itself. And then it's like a whisper, remember, presence, bro, like, come on. And so it can be, because it's divine and because it's everywhere, it can come through everything and anything.
Right.
Which the understanding of it in those spaces also provides another, come on, guide star, right? Another tool to help you get back in line and rooted into the present moment.
Right. And if you can create a life which is a temple, your life, your body, your mind, your career, your home, your relationship, if all these layers can be a temple instead of just a house, or instead of just a container, it can become sacred. Everything around you will be a reminder of the truth, which will bring you back to you and bring you back to presence, which will have you experiencing the gift of the divine on the daily. And that will help remind you in itself. You'll be brought back to the presence. And it's almost like you've jumped into this track where it's like, okay, I'm present, and there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. It's here, it's in your eyes, it's in the sunset, it's in the song, it's in everything. And it just continually echoes to you. And that's when you can, I think, enter that, you know, it might sound blasphemous, but like that prophet state where, you know, you might not be a prophet, but you might have those quality of thoughts. And then the question comes, are you going to do the work? Now that you have the truth, are you actually going to act on it? And that's a message I get again and again when I go into these spaces. It's like, you're here. Yes, you're in tears. Yes, it's beautiful. Welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to the divine. What now? What are you going to do with it? And I think it's from that point. Some people do nothing. Some people start to forget. Some people, it's a moment where they start changing their lives. And the real wizards in that moment harness that creative potential and create masterpiece of art through song, through writing, through dance, through video, through speech, through whatever, name it.
Divine inspiration. And people know the term, but true divine inspiration. You are a conduit for the energy source that is all things. And you are the perfect expression down to the mathematical micro point. And it comes through perfectly. And it's acknowledged and witnessed for everyone. That is the ultimate point, I imagine, is what you're saying.
And that masterpiece of art, from my observation, every time at the highest level, it has an underlying core purpose, which is to bridge the gap and to show people the divine, to be a window into the truth. Because once you've got it and you can harness it, and you're being asked, what are you going to do with this gift? Now that you know, now that you're here, now that you're in this prophet state, what next? The only thing there is to do is to show people the truth through art, right? To try to lift them. And you can never show somebody the divine. It must be felt, experienced from their perspective, but you can give them a hint. You can give them a feeling. You can give them a breadcrumb along the way. And again, after going to those spaces again and again, it's very fucking hard to go back to your desk job and sit in a cubicle prostituting yourself out to collect taxes.
Right.
Words are frequencies, and that's why we are going to be doing these, and we're going to be communicating as much as possible to articulate the thoughts that are hard to articulate and get them out so the channels become more clear. I don't want to speak for you, but that is personally what the journey of podcasting, and I think for everyone, you watch someone progress like a Joe Rogan from him starting to, 10 years down the ride, you do see use the word polished. There's a fine tuning to the presentation of that frequency, right? And it really is a channel that you will plug into. So you can pick what you want to describe or what you want to focus on. It doesn't need to be anything. It can be whatever you want it to be for people, anyone listening. Like, you don't need to pick something that's, maybe it's cooking. Maybe there's something that you love to do so much that you get into the state where you feel like you are tapped in. That's the calling, right? Like, that present moment is the thing that you are searching for, which will provide the peace and the acknowledgement. And if you lean into that, then the rest of this will kind of fall by the wayside, and the path will reveal itself. So yeah, man, that's I think that was a good start.
Beautiful, dude. Effortless.